Thanks to all of you that submitted your questions for this hashtag Football Hall of Fame Q&A. I was hoping to get more questions for this one, frankly. Just a little bit disappointed. I mean, I hope as I keep doing Q&As on this channel, I'll get more and more questions for different topics, or maybe I need to come up with some more interesting topics for you. Yeah, I don't know what the topic of the next Q&A will be. Whenever I do come up with it, I'll make sure to go to Twitter. My Twitter handle is @SchlegDaddyTV. I will make sure to tweet that out and let you know so that way you can get your questions to me. Let's get started on this one. At a Pizzle90, who in your opinion is or was the best quarterback to wear the number 12? I think you would have to say Tom Brady. New York fans going back in the day will say Broadway Joe Willie Namath, but I think it has to be Tom Brady, doesn't it? I would have to think so. At Grand Theft Pasta, do you think Michael Strahan is one of the best defensive ends ever? Well, he's a Hall of Famer. No doubt Hall of Famer. Is he a guy that I look at and say he's one of the 3 or 5 best ever to play the position? Probably not. I mean, I'm going to go first with guys like Reggie White and Bruce Smith and Deacon Jones and Gino Marchetti and so on and so forth. So, a great player, definite Hall of Famer. I always liked the way Michael Strahan played, both in terms of a pass rusher who could beat you with a variety of different ways, and then also his ability to play the run too, which I always felt was very underrated. He was a complete defensive end, and that's what I really appreciated and respected the most about him. At Anything Goes Show WWE, who should not be in the Hall of Fame, who is already in. A couple of names that jump out to me. One is Dave Robinson, who just got in this year. The bottom line is I don't think he was even the best Packer on those Lombardi teams of the 60s that still wasn't in the Hall of Fame. That, to me, goes to Jerry Kramer. Robinson getting in reeks of a political thing because of all of his years working for the Pro Football Hall of Fame. I'm just saying. Another one, Bob Greasy, has no business, in my humble opinion, being in the Hall of Fame, and that's just the way it is. Those would be 2 of the ones that jump out to me the very most. At Dynasty215, who do you think is more deserving to be in the Hall of Fame? Terrell Davis, Randall Cunningham, or Romanowski? Bill Romanowski, that is. Fuck Bill Romanowski. Sorry. Now we'll go to Cunningham or Terrell Davis. The shameful thing about Cunningham is a lot gets lost over time in terms of how transcendent of a talent he was at his time and how big of a star he was in his time and how much of a must-see talent he was at his time. He was Vic before Vic was Vic back in the early 2000s. Cunningham was that in the late 80s, early 90s. But it has to be TD Terrell Davis. He's the primary reason that John Elway finally won 2 Super Bowls at the end of his career. Terrell Davis, to me, is a guy that someday should kind of get that Gale Sayers treatment in terms of, even though he didn't play a lot, when he did play, a lot of it was very good. It was quality. It was top quality. And he was a top back during his short run. He might be a veterans selection someday, but I think he, by far, is the most deserving to be in the Hall of Fame. At WTF Curry, do you think that Randy Moss is a first ballot Hall of Famer? Well, the thing is the only wide receiver that's ever been a first ballot Hall of Famer is Jerry Rice. And I understood they were trying to withhold that distinction until Jerry Rice got in there. For my money, you're asking me, is Randy Moss a first ballot Hall of Famer? Yes. Randy Moss is on that short list of the greatest wide receivers that I personally have ever seen in my lifetime, behind Jerry Rice and behind Sterling Sharp. Yeah, Randy Moss was that much of a game changer. Randy Moss affected the way teams did their entire drafts. Look at like the Packers and the Eagles and all these teams that were drafting numerous defensive backs because they wanted to be able to stop Randy Moss. So I think he's got to be a first ballot Hall of Famer because not only was he a great player who put up great numbers, yeah, you had the disappointment of his Raiders years, whatever, but when he was great, man, he was one of the greatest, and he changed the game. So, yes, to me, that's a definition of a first ballot Hall of Famer. At Brian Smith, NB, what do you think of Ray Guy not being in the Hall of Fame? I think it's a joke. I think it's a travesty, especially in today's NFL where such a premium is placed on special teams play. You hear coaches talk about it all the time, players talk about it all the time, that special teams is a third of the game, which would make offense a third of the game, which would make defense a third of the game, but somehow along the way it got lost in translation where special teamers can't make the Hall of Fame because they're not offensive or defensive players. Well, a guy like Ray Guy with his 50-yard averages and his 5-second hang times and the way he changed field position, wouldn't that be considered a critical part of a winning team? Is it no surprise that the Raiders won some Super Bowls once Ray Guy was taken in the first round by Al Davis in the 70s? No. He's widely considered the greatest punter of all time. If you're the greatest ever at something in general, and especially when it comes to a punter, I do believe he should be in the Hall of Fame. And no, your other question, do you think he'll get in this year? No, I don't. I think it's still going to be a period of time. What I don't get is you've got a couple of kickers in there, and yet they're just special teams players too. See, that's what I don't get. Why can you have a couple kickers in there like a Jan Steterud, but you can't have somebody in there like a Ray Guy? Someday Vinatieri is going to be viewed as kind of a slam dunk Hall of Famer. Somebody like a Morton Anderson's going to get in, but yet a Ray Guy can't get in. That to me is a bit of a travesty. At Analyze 1929, will Donovan McNabb ever be inducted into the Hall of Fame? Ooh, boy. He's very borderline, frankly. You could make a compelling argument for him being included. You can make a compelling argument for him being good, but just not good enough. I mean, it's very close to me with Donovan McNabb. Ultimately, I would like to see him inducted someday. I think he's close enough to where he deserved that honor. Because let's face it, he did take the Eagles to 5 NFC Championship games during his time, took him to a Super Bowl. He was a franchise quarterback for a decade. He was one of the better players at his position during that time. I think you could definitely make a strong argument that he should be in the Hall of Fame. I do think it will take him some time, though, especially now in today's NFL, where 4,000-yard passing seasons are becoming more and more of the standard, and you have guys throwing for 5,000 yards in a season. It might make Donovan McNabb's numbers look a little less significant. At Anthony_Rizzuti, make your best case for Steve Smith being Hall of Fame worthy. When I look at Steve Smith, I look at a guy that sometimes has been underappreciated and been forgotten in Carolina for a long period of time. Played on some good Panther teams and played on some not-so-good Panther teams. My best case for Steve Smith, looking aside from the numbers, which he has some good numbers that would at least put him into the consideration, I look at the fact that, to me, Steve Smith dominated the game at about all of 5'9". He played what has progressively become a tall man's position in the NFL and dominated for a long period of time. And you look at Smith, too. Another thing I really like about Smith, it was his flair and his ability to make big plays in big-time spots in big games. So when I look at his playoff performances over the years, his regular season numbers, frankly, kind of put him close, maybe not. But it's those playoff performances and those performances in big moments and big spots and big games against big-time competition. That, to me, is what makes Steve Smith a Pro Football Hall of Famer, period. At Shablagoosh, what class will Favre be in, and who will be in his class? He'll be in the class of, because he'll be first ballot, obviously. He last played in 2010, so his Hall of Fame class would be 2016. And I can't quite remember who else would be in that class at this point, because Kurt Warner, I believe, is 2015. Yeah, I'm trying to remember. I can't remember at this point in time, frankly, who else would be in Brett Favre's class, but it would be 5 years after he played, so that 2016 Hall of Fame class, that's when Brett Favre will be inducted on the first ballot. At Danya Todd 18, will Brandon Marshall make the Pro Football Hall of Fame? And if so, will he be on the first ballot? I'll put it to you this way. There ain't no way in hell Brandon Marshall is making it on the first ballot. Okay. As far as Pro Football Hall of Fame, he's got some work to do. He's got a ways to go. Now, based off of his play of the past couple of years, he throws out a few more seasons like that, then my entire perspective would change and I could start to make the argument. At this point in time, no. Because he's also had a lot of off-the-field crap and that type of baggage that could hurt him in some voters' eyes, whatever. But if he continues to produce at a high level like he did last year and is doing again this year, and he does that for a few more years, man, all of a sudden you're talking about a 4 or 5 year window of incredibly impressive statistics with some other good performances in Miami and Denver. You could start to make the case, but at this point in time, no, I don't view him as a football Hall of Famer, nor do I think any of the Hall of Fame voters would actually view him as a Hall of Famer. Thanks again to you guys for submitting your questions on here. Like I said, as soon as I figure out what the topic is going to be for my next Q&A, I'll make sure and let you know. Hope you've enjoyed this fall ball series. We're halfway through the month, a little bit more, but we still got some more good videos to come from me. Yes, sir.